Hello, hello, hello. Um, so I'm just I watched The Wheel of Time. Um, yes, if you're a Wheel of Time fan, I know how that might make you feel. Uh, I understand absolutely, but I did watch it, and after I finished the show, I read The Wheel of Time. So you have at least that consolation. All right, it's not all bad. But in all seriousness, I was wanting to talk about the Wheel of Time, um, how I liked it, how I liked the show, how I liked the books, and how they stack up against each other. Um, I saw another video on YouTube like this of a much older guy than myself who actually read The Wheel of Time a long time ago, but got back into it through watching the show. And, well, for me, I never read The Wheel of Time before. The only thing I knew about it before reading it was that in The Wheel of Time, Brandon Sanderson, whenever he took over, would, um, what was it? He would turn portals into weapons. And so, to be completely honest, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to start the series was because I wanted to actually see how the portals are used as weapons. And I was disappointed to learn that that will only happen in the last three books. Oh, well, yes. Apparently, that will only happen in the last three books. So obviously, I didn't get to see that in the show. So a point off already. No, no, let's not really. But but let's actually get to talking about it because I got into the Wheel of Time by first watching the show, as I said. I just so happened to have Amazon Prime and old subscription that was running out. I watched the whole show, season one and season two, finished it up, and after I finished it up, I rented The Eye of the World from the library, and then I read through The Eye of the World, and then I picked up The Great Hunt and read through it. Much quicker than I read through The Eye of the World. Um, so let's talk about the show, let's talk about the book, and let's talk about my experience. So, I mean, technically, I did pick up The Eye of the World before I watched the show. And but I mean, I didn't really pick it up. I picked up the book, I got it from the library. I tried to read Ravens, and I couldn't finish that. So I sent it back to the library. I watched the show. And then once I already got a kind of an idea of how it ended, I read through both books. I read through both The Eye of the World and The Great Hunt. I did not get to start The Dragon Reborn today because the library was closed, unfortunately. But I finished The Great Hunt last night, so I guess I should just control myself. But, okay, let's finally get to the books and show. So, the most important thing I have to say about how the show compares to the books is that the show and the books just are different stories. I think that's the best way to explain it. The closest semi canonical justification I can have for them being in the same universe is that as the Wheel of Time turned, I mean, the books and the show are just different turnings of the Wheel of Time, but they're different stories. They're just different stories. There's no comparing the two. And in terms of like the Wheel of Time show is just so different from the books. It's not even comparable. It does some things better than the books. I do have to say that. Some things. in the show are better than the books, but the books overall are much have a much better story than the show. Um, so first off, that uh, one of the things that the show does better is not having the earlier Ravens thing in it. I don't know what anyone who read The Wheel of Time thinks of that, but that bored me the first time. I had to drop it because of Ravens. I had to drop the book because of Ravens. But anyways, that was not great. Some other things that weren't great about the book. Well, their own. It's not that the book did them badly. It's that the show did certain things better. But the show also just destroyed certain plot lines. So I'll just talk about what the show did better, and then talk about what I liked about the book more and why I like the book more. So, what did the show do better? First off, I know that in the book, you didn't really have to wonder who the dragon was because from the very beginning you were only following Rand and the Eye of the World. I mean, if this entire book is about who's the dragon and the only person whose perspective you're reading from is Rand up until the middle of the book, you're like, obviously obviously it's going to be this guy, right? That's what the book did. And so I really liked that in the show, I genuinely didn't know if it was going to be Rand, Perrin, or Matt until the end. I don't like how it was revealed at the end, but I genuinely liked wondering whether or not Rand, Matt, or Perrin was the dragon. That was great. I knew it wasn't going to be a Gween because I knew it was going to be a man, and I think the idea of their whole thing of making it possible for the dragon to be a woman in the show, that was weird. That was dumb. That's not the point. But like I was genuinely wondering if it was Rand, Matt, or Perrin. I even wondered for a second if it was Logain whenever I was watching the show. And that tension was good. That tension was great. And I liked that tension. I wish the book had it. I really do. I would have loved to have Matt and Perrin's perspectives in some of the earlier chapters of The Eye of the World, where it wasn't just all Rand, because early on, Rand was a bit boring. And like the fact that I only got to see other perspectives um, whenever the main characters weren't in the same location as Rand, not only was that a dead giveaway, it was just I didn't like it. Please. I wish. I wish that I I wish that the Eye of the World it wasn't so obvious at the start who the dragon was. I wish it was a debate between Rand, Matt, or Perrin, and that you could, but it wasn't. You just knew. You just knew. Oh, I should have said there's spoilers. I think I spoiled something, but honestly, if you couldn't figure out who the dragon was after the first 10 chapters of reading the book, I got no clue. And if you didn't binge watch the show, then you weren't going to finish the show anyway. So, um, yes. So that's the first thing that I liked about the show more. I didn't want to know who the dragon was. Now, what else do I like about the show? Hmm. Well, there's not actually that much. Not really. But the second thing I really liked about the show, plot wise, of course, we're comparing the plots of the show and the book. Um, it would have to be Celine. Since let's not, I don't really want spoilers. I imagine that if I read The Great Hunt before watching the show, um, even by the end of the show, I wouldn't necessarily get it whenever it comes to Celine. I wouldn't necessarily understand who she is, but the show, the fact that it reveals who she is, that may have been a good, that could have been a good decision, that could have been a bad decision, but it was done really, really well. Okay, I'm going to do spoilers. I'm going to do spoilers. Um, so the fact that the show did the character of Lanfear, Celine, really well, and I dug it up. It's it's one of those it wrote her in one of those ways where her character was both great, it was both someone that you were horrified by and disgusted by and wanted to see lose, but at the same time you wanted to root for her. And those kind of characters are absolutely amazing. Another one that I liked, for similar reasons would be not Snow in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So similar kind of characters, I would say. I would say Snow in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Lanfear and the Wheel of Time show season 2 are very similar characters. They're characters that you hate, you don't like, you know they're evil, you want to see them lose, but there's something about them that seems like they could have been, or they could be different, and you just wish that they turned in the right way, even though you know they won't. That, that is what I'm talking about. Not every character has to be that, but that is a great, great kind of villain. And they did it really well in the Wheel of Time show. Really well. And it was the best part of the season. Absolutely. As for. Oh, and there's one more thing in the show that was better than the books. And that was. What was it better? Let me think. Hmm. No. No, that it wasn't better. All right. So, now that we've got the things about the books that were good, oh, one second. In this show, season 2, Matt has a completely different arc from the rest of the cast. And I think the story arcs of Matt, Egwene, oh, Nynaeve, Nynaeve, season 2, which, by the way, season 1 of the show corresponds to The Eye of the World, and season 2 corresponds to The Great Hunt, if you did not know. Of course, if you're a person who knows the Wheel of Time, you know that. I'm just saying that for people who are introducing themselves to this series through my horrible video for some reason. But, um, anyways, the Nynaeve, Nynaeve, the White Tower, the Three Arches, Wheel of Time Season 2. That was an absolutely excellent sequence. Absolutely excellent. Especially the part where Nynaeve got trapped. That was excellent. The fact that you thought she was gone forever in the show, and how Egwene ended up saving her. That was excellent. The book, the Three Arches sequence, it was good. It was good. But in the show, the Three Arches sequence was excellent. It was totally different. I should point that out. The way the Three Arches tricked Nynaeve didn't happen in the book. In the show, the Three Arches tricked Nynaeve. In the book, that doesn't happen. what Nynaeve sees on the other side of the three arches, compared the book and the movie, the book and the show, they're completely different. Completely different. The show, though, it does it better, especially the third arch. The third arch was excellent. And of course, the consequences of Nynaeve entering the third arch was excellent. Um, and I mean, the Wheel of Time show does villains pretty well. It does, well, it does villains justice that the book never does. Though, of course, it also fails on some very important villains. It does do Leandrin excellently. Excellently. I mean, in in the books, we only meet Leandrin in this volume, The Great Hunt. We first meet her here, and she exists, and you don't exactly understand anything she's doing. In the show, we we see Leandrin starting in season 1, but Leandrin becomes a major villain quite clearly in season 2. And that and her villainy was great. Like, amazing. Leandrin was great in the show. She was obviously Black Aja in the book. Like, obviously not. Leandrin, I have absolutely no sympathy for her as a character in either the book or the show. But she was a great villain. A great villain. Um, and in the show, I liked her training sequence with Nynaeve. But yeah, a great villain. Absolutely great. Um, Speaking of Rand's arc in season 2 versus The Great Hunt, Rand's arc was different. I'm not going to say that his arc in the show was bad. His arc in the show was good, and Lanfear's character really shone through because of it. But it's not remotely the same as his arc in The Great Hunt. And Rand's story in this book is, I would say, better. It's a lot better. In the show, it was still good. It was still pretty darn good. Perrin, though, the show did Perrin horribly. Um, so I'm just listing things off. Shouldn't I say something more interesting? Okay, come on. Let's just continue on. So yes, I watched the show first, and things I really liked about it were the character. The things I really liked about it. What did I like from the first season again? You're probably laughing because, oh yeah, I liked that I didn't know who the dragon was in the first season. And in the second season, I really liked the characters of Lanfear. I liked the character of Matt as well. Absolutely loved him. Absolutely loved Leandrin, yes, as a character. Oh, and I also really liked that in the show, it was a lot easier to trust Moraine. Moraine was a very likable character in the show. And it's like I never had any doubts in the show of like what her intentions were. She was clearly the good mentor character, and so was Lan, and so was everyone in the group. I mean, Matt was annoying, but you know, Matt, I know you didn't go into the ways with them, but I mean, you're still cool. Um, like the whole group was great, the whole group. But uh, yes, I liked Moraine's character better in the show. Um, as for the books, let's finally get to the books. You already know what I think the show did better, what I think the show still did good, but let's talk about where the show really dropped the ball, at least in comparison to the books. And that starts with the road to Camelin. I mean, it starts with the entirety of the first season compared to the Eye of the World. Because those showrunners, I guess they really wanted everyone to get to Tarvalon. They really wanted to show off the White Tower and the Aes Sedai and all of that. And cool, you can do that. That's cool. It was not the right decision. It just wasn't. Um, I mean, it, the first season of the show was basically um, the I was basically Moraine arrives, Winter Night happens, the uh, the potential dragons flee into the wilderness, chased by all of those trolls and Trollocs and whatever. And then they go to Shadar Logoth because they're being chased. And I mean, the Shadar Logoth scene in the show, that was cool. That was great. More Death didn't exist, but eh, but after Shadar Logoth, they split up. They go their own separate ways, but you don't really have any sense of where they are throughout this entire thing. And then they all just happen to end up at the White Tower, and you don't really know why. Yeah, like sure, some cool stuff happened on the way. I liked that I met the traveling people. I liked that encounter with the White Cloaks, and I liked dealing with that random woman in the inn. You know, Matt and Rand had to deal with her, and they met Tom Merlin. Where did he go in the show? Huh? Where did he go in the show? I don't remember. But anyways, but anyways, I liked all that. It was good, but the in the books, the entire thing, basically, not literally the entire thing, but almost the entire thing, was just the journey between this Emond's Field and Camelin, and that was thrilling. The entire thing was thrilling. It's just like, oh, you could have done so much better. You could have done so much better. Literally every single scene from the Camelin Road sequence, I would have preferred to everything they had in the book. I would have. I wanted to see. I mean, just in the book, Baerlon was great. That was great. Um, the whole thing with Rand running into Captain Domon. And Tom Merlin, he was part of the party in the start of the books. And he just joins somewhere in the middle and dies like right after in the show, which is absolutely terrible. But anyways, um the Baerlon meeting Captain Domon, going to Whitebridge, surviving Whitebridge, running down Camelin Road, getting on wagons and carts, helping farmer's daughter Else, uh, and sneaking into Camelin, Rand falling down the palace walls, and meeting Elaine. Like, his confrontation with Morghese. Like, what else could you want? Oh, and also, speaking of Perrin's arc, Elias. Like, in the book, Elias was a great mentor. Running from the Ravens. Like, we can do so much better here. It was so great. The Camelin Road was so great. Of course, in the book, we don't get to Tarvalon, but I think that's better than not getting to Tarvalon because of the reasons that you don't go to Tarvalon and the Eye of the World. And it is because the Dark one's power is getting so strong that it has to be stopped now. It can't wait a moment longer, and so you have to rush into the light. And like the heroes themselves getting are being wounded by this growth in power, and you have to stop him. And that was great in the book, in the Eye of the World. And the show, season one, it should have copied the book a lot more. The direction they took the story was not where it needed to go. We did not need to see Tarvalon yet. Yes, it was cool to see Tarvalon, but we did not need to see it yet. I had no sense of where everything was. Um, I meeting Elaine in the first season would have been great, but we only got to see her in the second season. And overall, it was just not as good. But now we can get to something that both the show and the book do bad. And both the show and the book are pretty bad about this in both season one slash the Eye of the World and season two slash the Great Hunt. And that's the ending. I mean, these stories, they don't end very well. And by that, I mean, like, it's very anticlimactic for some reason. I mean, it's not entirely so. I mean, I felt Robert Jordan's not the only author that I think has some anticlimactic endings. For example, Brandon Sanderson. Now, he does most of his endings very, very well, but I distinctly remember reading the first Mistborn book and Vin's confrontation with the Lord Ruler, which if you haven't read it, I will just tell you that it seemed to me like Vin's victory in that instance. It came out of nowhere. It wasn't cool. I had no reason to be excited. And that kind of victory that comes out of nowhere but isn't exactly a Deus Ex Machina, that's how I felt like the ending of The Eye of the World was. And also season one. Like, okay, you cut the Dark One's power cord with the heron marked blade. You finally use channeling Rand. I still don't know what you did, and there's no explanation about what you did. You think you killed the Dark One, but actually he didn't. It turns out he didn't. Um, but what? I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. You won. It's spring now, but I have no clue how what you did and the consequences of that connected. You get what? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but that was my feeling. I I just don't know how in the world those two things connected. And it's very similar with um, the show. Like, Rand just uses this Angriel to channel, and he says no to the Dark One like he did 100 times in the book, and that does something. It's not even clear what it did. There's no visible effect of it in the show. So I liked that in the show, this whole ambiguous victory actually turned out to not do anything at all. We thought we sealed the Dark One that actually released his most powerful servant. Like, I liked that part of the show. I liked it because like now this ambiguous victory turns into, yeah, this victory was ambiguous because they thought it was a victory, but it actually isn't. But in the show, it was a victory. It wasn't the final victory, which I guess is fine since it's not the final victory. We're we're good, but it's still, I don't get it. What in the world is going on? And look, the very same thing happened in the book. Falm. Very same thing happened in book two. So book two, it was great, as well as the second season. The second season of the Wheel of Time show was great. The Hunt for the Horn, uh, following Rand, Matt, and Perrin. That story was a bit epic. Padan Fane was a great villain. One thing I didn't like about the book was that I felt like I received just too little of Nynaeve and Egwene's perspective. Just a little bit too little. A little bit more could have been good. And I noticed the Great Hunt is quite a bit thinner than the Eye of the World, so I know something could have been inserted. Maybe just a little bit more of Egwene's perspective. Maybe getting to see Leandrin and establish her as a villain a little bit more would have been good. But overall, the Great Hunt was great. Hunt. And I really enjoyed um, this whole idea in the books of how fate plays into things, like how the Horn of Valir is always ending up in just the right places so that it doesn't get blown by the wrong person. Like Padan Fane would have blown it any time he could, but he didn't know how to open the box. Lanfear, she knew how to open the box, but she wanted Rand to blow it. And then High King Turok, well, he also knew how to open the box, but he wasn't going to deign to blow something which should be. He wasn't going to deign to use a magical artifact that properly should have been used by the Empress, and so now Matt gets to blow the horn. Okay, that's cool. The Hunt for the Horn was basically a barely established side plot in the show. It was the thing in the book. It's called The Great Hunt. Season two of The Wheel of Time, like the Horn of Lear could have almost not been there, and it wouldn't have changed a thing. Um, but they're still both great. They're still both great, actually. It's just again season two, completely different. It's completely different from the book. And the book, um, so what I was going to say is that yes, the ending in the books and the movies, and both the first part, I mean, they're terror. I mean, they're not good. The endings aren't good for some reason. And why is the ending in the book not good? Well, it's the very same reason as in the Eye of the World. Um, Victory in the book was obviously going to come from defeating the Sion-Chan and getting them to retreat. Yes, the White Cloaks were there, but like, why? First off, why were the White Cloaks there in the book? What purpose did they serve narratively? And defeating them wasn't really important compared to defeating the Sion-Chan. So the but anyways, victory was always going to come from defeating the Sion-Chan. However, in the books, you don't really get to see the battle happen. You get to see Rand fight the Dark One in the sky, kind of. You get to see the battle start, and you get to see Rand's great winning move in the battle, but you don't get to really see the battle. You don't get to see it. And that was a lot better in the show. The Battle of Falm, though Rand you didn't have a battle in the sky when it comes to that. What was better in the show was just the fact that you got to see the battle in general. Yes, Egwene didn't exactly get freed in the same way, and she should have been freed in the same way that she was in the book. However, the White Cloaks did something in this show. they weren't just random set pieces like they were in the book that got wiped out with the rest of them. They actually did something, and they contributed to the hero's victory despite the fact that they also needed to be defeated in the end. They did something. They kind of outsmarted the Seanchan somehow, which is really cool when you consider that the White Cloaks don't use any magic. And the Seanchan, well, they have magic galore. So the fact that the White Cloaks did something, it was great. And I wish, but the book, despite the fact that there was this buildup of the White Cloak army coming to fall, it was just to kill them off. But like, why did we kill them off? These were good. These were good characters. They shouldn't have died. And there was this whole thing about some. I still don't know who the White Cloak is that was a dark friend in the beginning of this book. Like, who is it? It's this. He calls himself Bors, but that's obviously not his real name, and I don't think we meet him again at any point in this thing. What? It doesn't. It's like, okay, great build up for what? Come on. Okay, it's not here. It's just not here. I guess I'll have to read The Dragon Reborn. Of course, the whole Ishamael dying, I guess that was probably pretty dumb in the show. And Padan Fane was a really bad villain in the show. Yeah. Also, the thing where yeah, Padan Fane was a really he was just a side character in the show, but he was the villain in this thing. He had the horn. He had the dagger. He was the villain. And yet, we just he's not a thing in the show. So I do have a significant worry with the show now that this has nearly reached 40 minutes. I want to actually get to a point, which is very, very terrible that it's taken this long. But essentially, my main worry about the show is that it's going to just go in a completely different direction from the books, as it already has done so repeatedly. And like, so far, it's been able to create similar climaxes. At least they're able to create climaxes that are in the right physical locations. So far, their climaxes still suffer from the same how did this victory happen problem that um, I'm seeing in these first two books of the Wheel of Time. But um, yeah, how did the victory happen? I'm serious. How did Rand do anything in the first book? How did he hurt the Dark One in this second book? Like, how did this happen? I expect to understand as I continue on into the series, but I don't get it. I don't think that I can get it if I just read these first two books. And I still don't know how the victory happened in the books or in the show. So, yeah, it's just what's going on? The thing is, it does make sense to me that the show and the books are just two different turnings of the wheel. It kind of works. It totally makes sense. Maybe that explains why certain characters don't pass on because not all characters get spit back out by the Wheel of Time. But this is it's my big worry is that the show is going to have a plot that ends up being so different that it's eventually one of these days, one of the seasons will just not be based on the next book in the series. Like, it's already so different just looking at the first two books and the first two seasons, which are supposed to be parallel, that I just don't know if future seasons will be able to use the other books as source material. It's already getting so different. The like literally Padan Fane is being set up as one of the big villains of the third book, but Padan Fane is a non is a no-name side character in the show. Why would he be important in 3? And the show is setting up this, as of yet, relatively unknown Forsaken as the villain for season 3. Maybe that Forsaken appears in the books, but like that's not what I'm getting from this. I don't expect to find this spiderweb Forsaken in the Dragon Reborn. I may, but I do at least expect to fight Pat and Fane. And also the fact that Elaine and Rand are supposed to have. I mean, Rand's supposed to have romantic tension with a lot of different characters. But, I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen in the show. I think it will probably. I don't know if it's going to be contrived if it happens, because Elaine hasn't met Rand yet. Oh, she did meet him in the final scene of season 2. So I guess there's that. But no, like really, these are different stories. The books and the show are different stories. They have they share some locations, they share some similar magic systems, they share some characters, they share some plot points, but they are different stories. They are not the same turning of the wheel. They are not the same story. They are not even close. This is the show doesn't seem like an adaptation to me as much as a retelling. It's not removing scenes that are holding back the plot. It's not just adding a little bit of perspective here and there to make things work in a television format. It is just a different story, and I really don't know. I, I mean, by understanding the books and the show as different stories, I can appreciate them both, but I just really don't know if it will be the Wheel of Time by the end of the show's life cycle. And I mean, as a new fan, I don't think that really scares me. I mean, I'm sorry to offend you veterans, but I mean, it doesn't. It just doesn't. I have access to both stories. I might as well enjoy them both. But um, still, they're different stories. I don't think I'm exactly worried that things will be different, but I'm aware that they probably will be. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if future seasons will really have um, future Wheel of Times books as source material. I don't know. At this point, it seems like maybe one day the Wheel of Time is just going to be two shows, going to be two different stories, and maybe trying to communicate which one you're talking about won't necessarily be that easy. I mean, they're just different, and they're just different shows. They're different stories. What am I saying? They're different stories. That's enough reiteration of the same point. I almost sound like a discussion board post. Um, so it's time for me to end this review. I guess I was probably rambling too much because this has been 43 minutes long. That is ridiculous. But I don't think I can do shorter. I mean, this was unscripted, so I don't know if I'll ever do shorter. But yeah, at least you have some idea of maybe what these how the shows and the books compare. Which is better? The books have a better story. I mean, yeah, they have a better story. Um, I don't know which is better. Um, I would say the Eye of the World's probably the best of them. Then the Great Hunt. Then season two, The Wheel of Time. Then season one. Yeah. So yeah, I think this is over. I mean, this video. It should be over now. Um, uh, oh yeah. So, bye, bye, bye. Don't let the Trollocs in and Winter Night. And this is the end of the video.